Hello, I'm Jake Boudrot, Civic Journalist at Tello Community Television. This week on The Record, a Nova Scotia NDP MLA and the Interim Leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party address a number of issues. The RCMP is looking for a driver who fled the scene of a two-vehicle collision near the Canso Causeway. A 62-year-old Mabou man died after his vehicle left Highway 105, and the RCMP is seeking information from the public. Richmond Municipal Council held its regular monthly meeting on November 25th in Arichat. After the meeting, Warden Lois Landry took questions from the media. But first, the RCMP believes there could be more victims of a Richmond County resident who was arrested and charged with 10 offences, including sexual abuse and sexual exploitation involving a young person. On November 19th, Eskazoni RCMP officers responded to a report of a man causing mischief at a residence. The RCMP said officers learned that a man had attempted to gain entry into a home in Eskazoni to see a youth who was inside. Through the investigation, the RCMP said officers determined the man began a relationship with the youth in September. They said the relationship started online. On November 22nd, Eskazoni RCMP, with the assistance of Richmond County District RCMP, arrested 21-year-old Ethan Arnold Batiste at his residence in Budladek First Nation. The RCMP said a search warrant was executed and an electronic device was seized. The RCMP said Batiste has been charged with 3 counts of sexual interference and 3 counts of sexual assault, as well as 1 count each of making sexually explicit material available to a child, luring a child, invitation to sexual touching, making child sex abuse and exploitation material, break and enter, uttering threats, mischief under $5,000, and failure to comply with an undertaking. The RCMP said Batiste remains in custody and is scheduled to appear in Sydney Provincial Court on December 16th. Given Batiste's online presence, the RCMP added that investigators believe there may be additional victims, and they encourage other survivors to come forward by contacting their local detachment or police of jurisdiction. With me is the NDP MLA for Breton Centre-Whitney Pier. Welcome back, Kendra Coombes.
Thanks for having me.
So on November 26th, your party issued a press release after progressive Conservative members of the Natural Resources Committee voted against the NDP's request to have department officials answer their questions about the government's role in addressing Nova Scotia Power's overbilling, high bills, and handling of the data breach. Months after a cybersecurity breach, your party said many Nova Scotia Power customers are reporting that they are being charged double their actual usage on their power bills. So perhaps you can talk about your party's ideas to address these problems.
Well, first, Jake, let's be clear as to what's going on here. Tim Houston just made himself the Minister of Energy. And now it's time for him to step up and address the high power bills, the overbilling, and the concerns that Nova Scotians are having over their privacy. And in that meeting that you referenced, the PCMLAs blocked our party's simple request to question Department of Energy officials about the overbilling, the high costs, and the Nova Scotia Power data breach. So that was part and parcel of what was going on there in that committee meeting. As for solutions, real solutions, including we're offering a 10% power bill rebate, a low income power rate, stronger privacy protections, and a full review of the Nova Scotia Power's ownership and regulations. The other thing I'd actually want to add, though, is that the Houston government had another solution to help people. And that was the Premier could have not kicked 46,000 Nova Scotians off of the HARP program, and he could have not decreased the money by $200.
So the provincial government recently announced that a proposed golf course development in the West Mabou Beach Provincial Park will not proceed. Your leader, Claudia Kendra, said the hard work and advocacy from Cape Bretoners and Nova Scotians across the province was key to this not happening. The NDP went to the community and met with residents and various members of various groups. This must be gratifying to see that this decision was made and with all the efforts of your party to push against it.
We're very happy that as of right now, it's not going through, but it still has a potential to rear its head again. Look, when over 100 people gather in Mabou, in the cold and the rain, it really is a testament to how strongly they feel that protected land must be protected. And it was through their advocacy, their hard work, their advocacy, that this decision was ultimately made. But it should never, the proposal should never have gotten as far as it had. It caused, I'm sure you're aware, very much unnecessary uncertainty for the community and stress on the community. The Premier should have stopped it long before it reached the stage that it had.
Now, you just mentioned that your party noted that Premier Tim Houston still hasn't ruled out any future West Mabou development talks with Cabot Gulf. So what do you want to see this government do to, kind of make you guys a little more certain about what's going to happen there?
First, the government needs to stop entertaining proposals that put the public lands at risk for private profit, and commit to safeguarding parks across the province. Protected land must remain protected.
Now, you noted that after almost a year with no dedicated department of or minister of housing, the Houston government finally reappointed a minister, but has yet to reestablish the department. Now, would a single department be able to address all the problems like prices and availability, or would it at least be a good step in the right direction?
Well, yes, we are. My party has long since, for over a year, advocated that we needed a minister of housing. We need a department of housing. It is not something. Housing is huge. It's not something that people should be doing off the side of their desks. So reappointing a minister without restoring the department won't fix this crisis. Nova Scotians, they need a government that treats housing like it's an urgent priority, for one. So with that department must be looking at how do we strengthen our housing stock, so that looking at real solutions like rent control, better protections for renters, more affordable homes, and pathways to home ownership. These are things that the minister and a department can do. We just need a minister and a government and a department that is willing to do that.
Now, the Progressive Conservative Caucus recently issued a press release claiming that the opposition, including your party, called on the government to spend more on housing, but claimed your party and the Liberals as well voted against budget increases 4 years in a row. What are they talking about?
It's smoke and mirrors. They put forward a budget, but they always put a lot of what I call poisonous pills into those budgets that make it hard for opposition to vote on those bills. So that they can, but it's really just smoke and mirrors. It's playing politics.
Earlier this month, the NDP named its critic for ethics and accountability, Sackville-Cobequid MLA Paul Wozni. Can this critic role get answers and help reform rules that give governments what your party claims is too much power? And how would such a critic be able to do that?
So Nova Scotians, Jake, they deserve transparency about how government decisions are being made, who benefits, how much money is being spent, and whether policies are actually helping people. Under the Houston government, Tim Houston and the PCs have repeatedly avoided that kind of scrutiny, from untendered contracts to hidden reports that have left Nova Scotians in the dark well-connected insiders are benefiting. A dedicated ethics and accountability critic, in ours, it's Paul Wozni, is needed to push for stronger rules on lobbying, procurement, and government spending, so decisions are made in the public's interest and not behind closed doors. Through Paul, as our critic, we'll use every tool available to get answers for Nova Scotians and push for reforms that ensure the government serves the people and not PC party insiders.
Last month, the NDP charged that women's health care is an afterthought for the Houston government, pointing to information from the IWK Foundation that 70% of women said the current system doesn't meet their needs. So how is the current government failing women in this province, and what needs to be done?
Well, Jake, we are it's been a year since Tim Houston promised the Menopause Center of Excellence, and we have no progress on that and nothing to show for it. But we do have 350,000 Nova Scotians without the care they were told to expect. We have, I believe what you're talking about is the reports from the IWK as well as the Black Women's Institute. They're making it clear that women, especially Black women and gender diverse peoples, are facing many systemic barriers that demand urgent action. Prioritizing women's health and gender diverse people's health means keeping promises on expanding services, including menopause clinics, midwifery, endometriosis care, cancer screening, and access to birth control. Women need our health to be taken seriously. And we know that there's not much understanding on women's health. And the Premier promised it. And so far, a year out, we have no progress on anything. Dense breast screening, I have hundreds of emails from women begging for dense breast screening. We don't have it in Nova Scotia. And many women are far along in their cancer before they even know that they have it because the density of their breasts. It's serious. Women's health is a serious issue, and it's something that's been neglected.
In regards to changes to the provincial nominee program, your party said Nova Scotia needs workers now in healthcare, construction, and across many sectors. People who choose to study, live, and work here should be able to stay and contribute to their communities, your party said. So how can the provincial nominee program do this, and what needs to be done by the current government?
So for starters, in Cape Breton, particularly in my riding, we have individuals coming in all the time who have chosen to live and build their lives here in Nova Scotia and were promised a predictable pathway to stay here. They're skilled workers. They're workers that we need, right? And now they're in my office crying. And I mean, literally crying because they are terrified. Their life is on hold. They're terrified. They don't know whether they should stay, whether they should go. They don't know what's about to happen next. And the government, the Houston government, is not communicating with them. The backlog in the provincial nominee program has held skilled workers back and created needless barriers for employers who rely on them. So the changes, any changes that speed up this process and help trained workers remain in Nova Scotia are incredibly welcome. We need to keep pushing for a system that supports newcomers and strengthens our communities, because nobody deserves to not be provided real answers and to be kept left waiting about their futures. They're terrified, and it's extremely important issue.
Also, last month, the NDP said food bank use is up as costs continue to climb for Nova Scotians. Mm-hmm. So what would an NDP government do to address affordability?
Well, I can tell you what the Houston government, who is governing, needs to do right now. They need to stop making cuts to things like the heating assistance rebate program where they kicked 46,000 people off. They need to start looking at how to make life more affordable for people, whether that is looking at the 10% power bill rebate, whether it's looking at lower income power rates to make life more affordable there, looking at real rent control, looking at how to help lower people's bills. And instead, that is not what's happening. Under this government, we have seen food bank usage surge just by 10% in a single year under Tim Houston. People are having a hard time trying to decide between their rent, their groceries, and their power bills, or to heat their homes. Since Tim Houston took office, costs have skyrocketed. Food bank usage is by 66%. Rent is up by $4,400 a year, and power bills have gone up $400. This government needs to start looking at lowering costs, and they can do that. But that's their choice, and it seems to me that as of right now, they're choosing not to do so.
Earlier this month, your party said PCMLAs rejected a call to create a child and youth advocate. So what would such a position do for young people in Nova Scotia?
Children and youth are among our most vulnerable, but they don't have an independent voice standing up for their rights and their well-being. A child and youth advocate would step in when kids aren't being heard or protected, making sure that their concerns are raised and acted on, especially when the adults and the systems around them have fallen short. Now, Tim Houston promised this advocate 4 years ago and has made no appointment, no timelines, and no plans. It's been an empty promise. But you ask, what can they do? Well, recently in PEI, the Youth and Child Advocate raised the alarm regarding safety in schools. Recommendations have been made, and that youth advocate is charged with advocating and making sure that the government is protecting those kids when they're in schools. In New Brunswick, the Youth and Child Advocate recently called into question the underfunding of child welfare services in New Brunswick. Their job is to make sure that the government gets the memo and starts properly funding child welfare services in New Brunswick. That is what the Child and Youth Advocate does. It is there to protect kids. Nova Scotia is one of only 2 provinces without an independent advocate, and young people deserve the same protections as every other Canadian.
Joining me is the interim leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party and the MLA for Sydney Member 2. Welcome back, Derek Mombourquette.
Hey, thanks, Jake. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So earlier this week, your party wrote Premier Tim Houston and Nova Scotia Power to launch an independent review of Nova Scotia Power in response to concerns raised by customers that their power bills just don't add up. In some cases, they're getting bills hundreds of dollars higher than what their meters show. What are you hoping that this review would accomplish?
Well, a number of things. So this really goes back to the beginning when we were talking about the cyber attack that impacted really hundreds of thousands of Nova Scotians. People received letters then. People are still receiving letters now. And at that point, we requested to have Nova Scotia Power come before public accounts. So that process took place. But what we've been hearing from folks across the province in the last number of weeks is that their bills are coming in, and these are estimations that are way higher than they would generally pay on an annual basis. So a few weeks ago, we asked for an independent review of Nova Scotia Power based on the cyber attack, and what findings we could come to, what conclusions we could come to help strengthen the utility and the support that they provide, and really the power that they provide Nova Scotians. And when this issue really started taking place around the estimated power bills, it just reinforced our idea of doing an independent review, looking at what happened during the cyber attack, looking at, what's happening right now around billing, and what other processes we may be able to put in place to help support Nova Scotians who are utilizing the utility each day.
Now, you noted the cybersecurity breaches, and has Nova Scotia Power addressed this in any sufficient way, according to what you can see?
Well, what we do know right now in Nova Scotia Power is, they initially had a 3-year credit monitoring process. They've moved that to 5 years at the recommendations of the Public Accounts Committee. We know that more letters have gone out to folks, across the province again in the last number of weeks, encouraging people to sign up for that free credit monitoring. So that tells me that they're still into the investigation about actually how many people may have been impacted by it. They indicated that at Public Accounts. So for us, we want some accountability around this. Nova Scotians are asking us to speak up on their behalf with what's taking place. And for us, it's unacceptable. There is an ability that we can look at doing an independent review. We are going to present ourselves as a caucus in front of the Utility Review Board, as well, expressing the same concerns and looking for ways to help support Nova Scotians, whether it's the work we do each day through our offices or through legislation.
Now, recently, the provincial government announced that the West Mabou Beach Provincial Park development will not proceed. Your party asserted that this proposal should have never gotten this far in the first place, noting that the application from Cabot Gulf put the entire community of Mabou and the surrounding areas through turmoil and hardship for no reason. What would a Liberal government have done differently in this situation?
Well, the Liberal government were on the record back in 2018 when the first proposal came. So we didn't support the idea of using the provincial park as part of a development. If it's private land, that's a different conversation. But we've been on the record since 2018. So our stance essentially hasn't changed since then. To your point, this has been a lot of pressure on the community. This is the third time that the community is going around this. Are dealing with this, this potential proposal, and we stand firm that the West Mabou Beach and the park be protected within any development. We protect land for that reason, for us to enjoy today, and for future generations to enjoy. And you've seen really people all over Nova Scotia come forward and speak up when a potential proposal was put into place. And the government was talking to them. There is correspondence that the government was talking about a development there and using part of the park. So, as I said, our stance hasn't changed since 2018. I really want to congratulate the community for stepping up and making their voice loud and clear that this is not a development. And Nova Scotians really right across the province doing the same on behalf of the community. So. For us, we never entertained it in the beginning, and we wouldn't have entertained it now.
Is your party's stance that protected land in Nova Scotia should remain protected at all costs in every case?
Well, I think the important thing is that there needs to be a balance between development and land protection. As I said, there are parcels of land that are protected across the province for future generations to enjoy. I think there is lots of opportunity for development on private land that's not protected, and other land that the government may look at. But I think a lot of that comes down to the science. So, we've advocated when it comes to resource development, doing the science around Nova Scotia, actually, mapping out the land to determine where our best potential is. It's something that the Mining Association has talked about too as well. And I think there is a proper way to do it. Do the science and do the proper consultation.
Now, your party claimed that the Premier still hasn't ruled out any future West Mabou development talks with Cabot. Should the current government make it clear that such proposals involving protected land not proceed in any case, especially here we're talking about West Mabou?
Yeah, I think that's an important conversation, and it's a conversation that's continuing in the community and really right across the province. For us, we went to committee. My colleague Ian Rankin went to committee and actually put a motion on the floor of committee to have that land protected and not to look at it again. And the government voted it down. So I can appreciate why people are still concerned, and we're still concerned. So, we'll be pushing. We're continuing to talk to the community. Ian's actually he's in the community now. He's engaging with stakeholders before we do our out-of-town caucus here in Sydney this week. And we're going to be pushing continuously to make sure that, this is the third time the community has gone through this. They don't need to go. They should never have gone through it the third time, and they shouldn't go through it again.
Now, last month, the Liberals urged the youth in government to honor the $10 a day childcare commitment. And recently, the province announced more early learning and childcare spaces in Inverness and Guysborough counties. Is that announcement sufficient from your perspective?
Well, so I, as the person who was involved with the negotiation of the first agreement, the agreement is that the average of childcare of $10 a day should be in place by 2026. I don't agree that there should be a delay in that. The current government has tried to play both sides of the fence. They they announced these childcare spaces, but at the same time have been hypercritical of the deal, a deal where they've announced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new childcare seats across the province. So, I'm hoping to have the opportunity to speak with the minister responsible federally about it, about the situation and what's taking place. But the government has not released much information in regards to what their next plan is with the childcare deal, but it should be average $10 a day.
Earlier this month, the Progressive Conservative Caucus issued a press release criticizing the opposition for calling on the government to spend more to address housing, despite what they claim the parties, including yours, voting against budget increases 4 years in a row. What is it they're hitting at here?
So I think that it's a classic game of politics. I could sit here and I could list 100 things that the current government didn't support when we were in government. They didn't support pre-primary. They didn't support infrastructure for housing. They didn't support infrastructure for healthcare or hospitals. So, that's their way to say that, the government doesn't support their budget. Our argument is that, of course, we want to see investments in healthcare, and we want to see investments in housing, and we want to play our part, and we'll table legislation and we'll bring our suggestions forward. Our challenge with the current government is that they're making decisions around infrastructure that everybody will accept, but they're also, in our opinion, really doing damage when it comes to the long-term deficit of this province. You're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent. You're seeing a lot of on-tender contracts coming, and now you're in a situation where they're looking to cut back. They're looking to cut back the civil service. They've cut back the heating assistance rebate program because they haven't had control of the finances really since they've formed government. So, I disagree with their argument that they say that we don't support housing or any other political party for that matter. We want the best for folks. We want affordable housing for folks. I think that's one of the biggest challenges here is that, there is housing going up, but a lot of it is unattainable or unaffordable for people across the province. What we want to see is the ability for people to be able to live comfortably in their home, and that government's making investments around affordable housing, working with some of the great organizations we have across the province.
Now, when I spoke with the MLA for Richmond, Trevor Boudrot, I asked him about his government's commitment to healthcare, given the deficit, which you just noted, and he was of the belief that his government will continue spending money in healthcare. Are you worried that because of this deficit that they might not be able to maintain that promise?
Well, regardless of the deficit, I'm concerned around the fact that there are a lot of aspects of the healthcare system that haven't gotten better. Like the ER wait times at the Cape Breton Regional are astronomical. We're seeing closures of ERs across the province where people have limited options if in the case of emergency. The government's coming out and they're saying that the needed doctor wait list is down substantially, which if people are getting a doctor, that's great, but they won't release the information to show people where those doctors are going and provide the information that, quite frankly, they used to help get elected to form government in the first place. So We're seeing the infirmary in Halifax, which is now way over the anticipated budget. So I'm sure that they're going to continue to make investments in healthcare, but it's going to be a very interesting time. This is the most significant deficit we've ever had, and as I've said, the finance minister was out this week talking about elimination of public service positions. We saw 40,000 Nova Scotians now not eligible for the heating rebate assistance program. They also changed the threshold. So we're keeping a close eye on what they're actually going to do to try to rein in that budget, because over $1 billion for a population of just under 1 million people is significant. And we haven't seen a plan yet for them, how they're going to address it. So it is going to impact everything we do. The question ultimately becomes as we get into the next budget, what are they looking at? And we'll get another fiscal update in December.
Now, moving from the provincial budget to the federal budget, it was recently approved in the House of Commons. So I assume you were happy to see that was approved. And what is it you're going to be looking for from the Carney government as it relates to Nova Scotia?
Well, there's a number of things, right? So yeah, I'm very happy that the budget is passed. I think from some of the aspects that are in it, but also for stability. I think going into nobody would have wanted a federal election this soon after. We're in a very unpredictable time when it comes to our trade relationships south of the border and how we're trying to recalibrate really how we operate as a country. Here in Nova Scotia, it's no different. Like I will continue to push, and what I like seeing in the budget is the work around infrastructure. Like, I'm a big proponent of rail. Like I think and our ports, like we need, if we're going to grow our economies in Cape Breton and beyond, we need to get product to port. So that's going to be a very big one to watch. Infrastructure around rail. There's big talk too in the budget, and there's money there associated with housing, which we were just talking about, which will be important for communities across the province and the island. And one of the big ones for me that the government isn't talking about is the military. So we have a big footprint now currently when it comes to the military in across the country, Nova Scotia. So for us, in the budget for me, that's one of the biggest ones I see, is that like what potential do we have to really right across the province when it comes to this push around the military. This brings big infrastructure, this brings jobs, this brings people to our communities. So there are lots of things to look forward to. I'm heading to Ottawa the first of the week, so I'm going to have an opportunity to talk with federal ministers and representatives about what I see is important for communities on the island and across the province. And I think there's a lot of potential there. It's a big work in progress. As I said, this is a big recalibration for this country when it comes to how our trade relationships are taking place.
Now, I assume too, under the massive Building Canada Fund, where we're looking at housing and infrastructure spending on a big level, I assume that you're going to be also looking to see what Nova Scotia is going to be getting from that fund.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as I said, like for us in Nova Scotia, and I've said this in multiple avenues and in multiple crowds, that for us in this province, infrastructure is really going to be key to set the conditions for businesses to grow, right? You got to get product to port. So you're going to need good rail, you're going to need good roads, you're going to need airport infrastructure. We have some port infrastructure in place now in the Strait and in Sydney and in Halifax and beyond. So like there's lots of great opportunity there. And my focus, if we're in government, is okay, like what do these programs look like? What can we capitalize on that's going to help day-to-day Nova Scotians, which housing, some of that aspect of that fund, but also, how are we truly going to grow our economy? It's not going to be one big mega project, right? Like, there are some talks about certain things across the province when it comes to offshore wind, and now they're talking about oil. At one point, they were talking about uranium. It's a lot of marketing. You got to get that product to port. You get it to port by utilizing rail, by utilizing air, by utilizing our roads and our geographics when it comes to our ports across the province to get product around the world.
Now, going into the end of 2025 in the new year, what are your plans ahead of the winter sitting of the Nova Scotia Legislature? I know you just mentioned you're going to be going to Ottawa next week, and other than that, what else are you going to be doing?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us right now is that we just came off of our annual general meeting, which was very successful. Hundreds of people came through. That was really kind of the goal of this past year. You know, we're actually almost a year anniversary since the election. So, you know, we spent the last year out and across the province and across the island engaging with Nova Scotians, you know, getting some great feedbacks and some important and some raw feedback when it comes to what people saw in the last campaign and what we need to focus on. So, you know, we're always, a lot of our policy and a lot of the things that we talk about are based on the conversations that we're having with people across the province. So we're going to continue to do that. It's an exciting year for the Liberal Party. Just the leadership is this year in November, not this November, next November. So, you know, you'll start to hear a lot around that too as well. We're gearing up for that. But it was considering the result that we went through, and as tough as it was on election night a year ago, you know, I sit here talking to you a year later saying, what an honor it's been for me to be the interim leader, to travel the province, to talk to people about what matters to them, about what we should be advocating for, and you know, to go into the AGM and to see that many people engaged in the Liberal Party, and not only just Liberals, but people in general who want to come in and provide feedback. It's been an honor to do it, and we're going to continue to do it.
Inverness County District RCMP is looking for information from the public after a two-vehicle collision on Highway 104 in Alls Cove. On November 21st at around 8:12 a.m., RCMP, EHS, and Fire Services responded to the report. The RCMP said officers learned that an eastbound Cadillac ATS, which had been driving erratically, struck a westbound Buick 202. The Buick then hit a guardrail and flipped onto its roof, the RCMP said. The driver of the Buick, a 51-year-old man from Troy, was not physically injured, the RCMP said, noting that the passenger of the Buick, a 21-year-old woman from Port Hawkesbury, was transported to hospital by EHS for non-life-threatening injuries. The RCMP said the driver and lone occupant of the Cadillac fled the scene. The vehicle was later found abandoned on Newtown Road in Newtown, the RCMP noted. When contacted, Constable Mandy Edwards, the Nova Scotia RCMP's public information officer, replied via email that the registered owner of the Cadillac has been identified, but the identity of the driver has yet to be confirmed. Noting that the investigation is ongoing, Edwards added that police are receiving tips from the public. Anyone with information or dashcam video of the collision who hasn't already spoken to police is asked to call Inverness County District RCMP at 902-258-2213 or contact Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers. Inverness County District RCMP is investigating a fatal single-vehicle crash which took place in Aberdeen, Inverness County on November 27th. At around 8:14 a.m., RCMP, EHS, and Fire Services responded to the report in the 11100 block of Highway 105. The RCMP said a westbound Hyundai Sonata left the roadway, went down an embankment, and struck a tree. They said the driver and lone occupant of the vehicle, a 62-year-old man from Mabou, was pronounced deceased at the scene. An RCMP collision reconstructionist was at the crash scene, and the highway was closed for several hours, the RCMP noted. The RCMP added the investigation is ongoing, and anyone with information on the crash, including dashcam footage, is asked to call Inverness County District RCMP at 902-258-2213 or contact Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers. While reviewing matters from an in-camera session, Richmond Municipal Council accepted a staff recommendation to further explore and negotiate the contract for solid waste management disposal.
We have next item 6 on the agenda is recommendations from in-camera. Do we have any recommendations or motions we'd like to make based on our in-camera discussions?
But I would like to make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation to further explore and negotiate contract for waste, is it waste, solid waste management disposal.
We have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. Any discussion on that? Go ahead. Sorry, did you have?
No, I guess we discussed it. It's just there was some things that you'll be looking at before signing that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so we certainly will, expect our staff to continue those negotiations to our benefit. Any other comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Now the item from the in-camera session about the contract for waste disposal, how much can you talk about that? What's going on there?
So there is a second generation landfill that we use in Guysborough. And so the contract has reached its 20-year end point, and that is effective December 31st of 2025. So it was signed in 2005, and that is coming to an end. And so it's really a renegotiation of an additional contract. So we've been presented with some first drafts of that. And so the motion tonight authorized our staff to continue with those deliberations and bring it to a close. Can't really speak any more to that as a contract, but we expect that that will go along just fine.
Council approved a recommendation from its Committee of the Whole in response to a request from Raising the Villages.
The committee discussed the Raising the Villages request for support for Regional Wellbeing Conference and the Richmond County Intergenerational Health Fair. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and support the March 26th Wagmatcook Regional Wellbeing Conference at $500 and the Richmond County Intergenerational Health Fair to be held in Richmond County in early 2026 at $1,000 to be allocated from the sponsorship budget contingent on both events taking place.
There's a motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so looking into this a little further, it doesn't look like we did allot them anything at budget time this year. I was under the impression, Committee of the Whole, that we had, and I found it in 2023, but I didn't see it in 24 or 25, so that's where I've kind of changed my thought on this, because I am in support of them. I just didn't know. I thought we had already provided them with some this year, some operational funding, but since we hadn't, I'm comfortable with this.
Great, thank you for that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay? Okay, so one nay recorded for the record.
Are you happy that the municipality is going to be able to support the Wellbeing Conference and Health Fair, the request which was made from Raising the Villages?
Yeah, Raising the Villages does great work, and lots of organizations are trying to find their way back after COVID, and so we have some information from them about events that are scheduled, one of which is happening in Richmond County. They do, as somebody who worked with school-age children for a long time, much of their work sort of focuses on that underlying issue of supporting the youngest in our communities and the impact that provides to municipalities and all of us in the province. So we're happy to provide that support.
In response to a memo about property assessment under the Municipal Modernization Act, Council approved a recommendation from its Committee of the Whole session to invite Property Valuation Services Corporation to a future meeting to make a presentation.
Discussed the letter from PVSC regarding property assessment and the Municipal Modernization Act. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and direct staff to contact PVSC to invite them to do a presentation.
We have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any conversation on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Now the presentation from PVSC, what is the reason? Is that to walk you guys through some changes that are coming up?
Yeah, I think the PVSC is always going to be something that councillors hear about, because every January we know in the last several years that we have seen sizable increases to our assessments. So we've seen, although we are lucky, so people who have lived here for a long time can see their cap goes up, but not by nearly as much. But people who move to the area, people who are trying to sell their homes, know they're going to sell them and that cap is going to be gone, and people are are going to have to pay sizable amounts more. So it is always a concern of residents, and of course we hear about it. So this wouldn't be the first time that PVSC has come and done a presentation. We did get a letter from them at the last meeting that talked about some changes they're making that may require some additional funds to pay for the service that they provide. And of course, we had, unanimous consent around the table, unanimous support for a little bit more information from them and an in-person visit. They did come shortly before the election, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, following some pretty significant jumps in people's assessment. They came, they gave good information, and we're looking forward to the same.
Council accepted a recommendation of the Bylaw/Policy Committee to consider a $400 annual contribution during budget deliberations in response to a request from the River Bourgeois Community Services Society for funding for lights at the River Bourgeois Lighthouse.
The committee discussed the River Bourgeois Community Services Society's request for funding in the yearly budget for the power-based lights at the River Bourgeois Lighthouse. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Bylaw Policy Committee and defer the discussion to budget deliberations to consider a $400 annual contribution.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
On the River Bourgeois Lighthouse, what was the conversation behind deferring that?
Sure. So we did have a conversation. We had a request from them, and in fairness, this is going on almost a year ago. And the issue is that there is a lighthouse. I always want to be careful when I say this. The lighthouse is still lighting up for marine traffic, but they have switched from power line lighting up that lighthouse to solar panels. And what they've said is that's much more reliable, probably cheaper, but we can't have power outages affecting whether our lights come on in our lighthouses. But what that did is it meant that there was no power to the lighthouse, which has become a bit of a beacon within the community and a little bit of a tourist attraction. And it's an important part of their tourism strategy and so on. So originally they asked for some operating, so they want us to support the group, not DFO, but the group running power. So at first we thought maybe a street light would do it. And so that's how it's kind of meandered for a little longer than we would have liked it. But it was because we had hoped that we could actually include it with under the streetlight policy, and a streetlight would solve the problem. But it looks like that doesn't work. And so it's gone back to budget deliberations to look at whether or not, and we do provide grants to, the Caskell House gets one, and, for example. So we do recognize that this is not a change that they chose. It's not something new they're trying to do. It's a DFO decision, understandably so, why they made that decision, but it does have a negative impact on the community. So we're going to revisit that a little later in the year.
So why is it you're looking at an annual contribution at budget time? Is that just the best way to deliver that money?
Yeah, we looked at all the different ways that we could do that. And look, we don't want to get into, operating expenses for every organization. This is a little different in that it's a change that DFO made that really does sort of upset the way that has worked. And it's an important landmark in the community.
The municipality sent a letter to Rahul Singh, Executive Director of Global Medic, to express their appreciation for the donation of a fire skid unit.
There is a letter that we provided to Mr. Rahul Singh from Global Medic for appreciation of the donation of the fire skid.
Now that fire skid unit that was donated, where was it donated to, and what's the kind of the use of it? Like how needed was it?
I think there's very little fire services equipment that we wouldn't use. So it was parked out here a little while ago. It fits in the back of a half-ton truck. It's a monster water container vessel that allows it to be pulled to other locations. So you could send it somewhere to be filled while your trucks stay put. And so I want to say Loch Lomond, but I shouldn't say that because it could be that it's something that would move around.
Finally, Council approved a motion to submit its application to the new Provincial Regional Fire Services Providers Fund.
Items added to the agenda. We had a motion to add an item following the item added to the agenda form. Do you want to speak to this, or would you like me to?
I can if you
Go
like.
ahead, please do.
Okay. Yeah, so the province came out with a fund to help regional fire services, and it is upwards of $200,000 that is available. Looking for a contribution from the municipality of 10% of that. And it came out 3 weeks ago and has a deadline in next week. So we got the application put together, got some quotes. We had a regional fire services meeting last week. And a number of items were listed that would be highly beneficial to all the fire departments in Richmond County and those that we support through mutual aid. So we have a grant ready to go. We have funds that we are reallocating within the fire emergency services budget, so it's no new funds to the budget. So we can take that on and without any addition to our budget at this time. So the quotes and everything are there. They'll be included in the minutes of this meeting for anybody in the public that's interested. And it's in front of council for their authorization for us to submit this grant this week. So we are in on time.
And actually, just a clarification, the additions are published the following day. So the minutes won't be published the following day, but we have to include this information on the package the following day. So, yeah. So for anybody who wants to report on that, I guess. Yeah. So, the deputy, CAO has provided us with a little bit of information, and we're looking for a motion to make that happen. Motion that we're looking for is the council approve the Emergency Services Provider Fund application, and further move that the municipal contribution for this application be funded through the Fire Services and Emergency Measures budget. So that is moved by Councillor Marchand. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Mombourquette. Any other discussion on that? No. Go ahead.
So I know that I'm just looking, and we did just receive this, so I'm looking at the amounts that add up to the $200,000. These sound like great investments, and I'm thinking wildfire protection, particularly. Councillor Sampson, we had that issue in Framboise area in the eastern end of the county. So really great to see. The pilot certification courses. Is that for members of the fire department? Would it be for our emergency management officer? So it would be for multiple people. So we would have a group of people qualified to operate that drone. Okay, that was my question.
If I did ask additional questions, and so I can offer that is whatever number that is, it would allow subsequent budgets to continue to add to the number of people who would be able to. So we could continue to add people to that training list.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done.
And this is supposed to be done every 2 years now.
Yeah.
So it's a new funding stream
Yeah.
from the province.
It's a lot of money, and it's a great investment. Anybody else? Did you have?
Comment, on page 1 at the very bottom in partnership, should we have Village of St. Peter's there or just the volunteer fire departments?
Because we are two municipal units and St. Peter's serves the village, we get to combine it as two. Where there is some hope that would add weight to our application, so that there are two municipal units. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And I will say, I believe there was some discussion about whether or not we could add Baudelaire to this application form. Some concern that was a federal jurisdiction as opposed to provincial, but certainly discussion about they would be included in benefiting from this, but they aren't listed on the application because it didn't seem to quite qualify. Okay. Hearing no other discussion, there's a motion that has been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Great. Motion carries.
Now, the Emergency Services Provider Fund, it looks like you guys are going to meet the deadline, which is good news.
Which groups are on the list that you guys are applying for funding for?
The Emergency Services Provider Fund used to provide $20,000 that could be used to cover up to 75% for every fire department could apply every 3 years. And a huge change came down in October of this year. Now you can use it to cover up to 90% of expenses. It is $30,000 per fire department instead of 20, and you can apply every 2 years. So that's great news for our individual fire departments. They use that to purchase PPE, to purchase new pieces of equipment. It is a really important part of how we manage fire services in the municipality. But in addition, they added a regional fund, which was brand new. And honestly, I won't lie, kind of caught us off guard. And so we have a commitment here. We're applying for everything. Can't score if you don't shoot. So we will apply for all the things. This is meant to be equipment that is regional in nature, so not attached to any individual fire department, but something that we would find a way to house sort of centrally that would be of benefit to all fire departments. So for example, one of the things we're looking at is a drone. So when we have fires, particularly wildfires, we need to be able to locate hotspots. We need to be able to know how far a fire has gone, if there are any structures that we're not aware of, what's nearby. This drone would be available to all the municipality or all of the fire departments within our municipality and as part of our mutual aid. And so that would be one example. There's a wildfire piece of equipment which would allow, it's more of a spray. So wherever the wildfire is, that's where we will go. And so we know that in a lot of the new the governance study that came out not long ago talked about fit testing. So some equipment for fit testing would be something that we would have available to all our fire departments. The application sort of suggests that you're looking to look at all municipal units within a region. And so what we're saying is that we have a municipal unit within Richmond County, which is the village of St. Peter's. So really, we're lucky to be able to say that. It isn't to say that it's exclusively Richmond, because our straight area mutual aid extends beyond Richmond County. But what I will say is that part of why it's been a mad dash, like it's the 25th tonight and we have to get it in by the 1st, is we wanted to have conversations with the fire departments. And we had a meeting with them recently, and I cannot speak highly enough about the fire departments and how well they work together in Richmond County. And so they were really, all of the fire departments spoke about, look, here's what's needed. And there was no what I need. It was what do we need as a whole. So I think that relationship with St. Peter's as it relates to fire is perfection, as is our relationship with fire departments on these topics.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.